started. As people come in, we can adjust from there. But welcome to the third and final for this year webinar of Making Miss Minnesota and Miss Minnesota's Outstanding Teen. My name is Ellie Mark, and I am the current Miss Minnesota. And we'll jump into the rest of our introductions. So, Jody, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hey, Jody Swadja. I am the Vice President of the Executive Board.
Thank you, Jody. And Madison.
Hi, everybody. I am Madison Reynolds, and I am the Northern Minnesota Field Director and Recruiter. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. And Bella.
I am Bella Grill, and I am the current Miss Minnesota's Outstanding Teen 2020 and 2021.
I know, I almost put just 2021 on there, and I was like, that is doing her a disservice because
that's only half my year, Ellie. We need to cover the full thing.
Yeah, exactly. You deserve the recognition. Alrighty. And so there are some new people on here. So if you've done this before, I apologize. You're going to do it again. And we're just going to do some quick introductions. So you're going to state, your name, your hometown, or where you're living right now, whatever is best for you. And then if you're in the teen or the miss category. And just a refresher, 13 to 18 is teen and 19 to 26 is miss, to give you that idea. I'm sorry, a dog just walked up here and I wasn't expecting to see him. So Anna Lynn, I will have you go first.
Hello, my name is Anna Lynn Wallen. I'm 14 and in the teen category, and I am from Frazee, Minnesota.
Thank you. Now, Kayla Betcher.
Hi guys, I'm Kayla Betcher. I live in Eagan and I'm in the Miss category.
Thank you. All right. And Cadence. Oh, you're still muted, Cadence. Oh no. I don't know why it's still muted. Okay, I'm going to come back to you. Yes. Lydia.
Hi, I am Lydia Jagosinski. I am in the Miss category and I'm from Mankato.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. All right. Cadence, are you having any luck? No. Well, I can kind of introduce Cadence. I'll give her like a little bit of prep, and then you can say something in the chat too if you need to add anything. But I just met Cadence actually at an appearance. I was at Fairmont High School and bumped into her and some of her friends at lunch and basically said, you should think about competing. And now she's here, so I'm super excited. So I think you're from Fairmont, correct? You can just like nod or... Yes. Okay. Awesome. So perfect. Sorry about that, but glad you're here. Mackenzie, if you would introduce yourself. It's not working for you either. Oh my goodness. So Mackenzie is also a teen and in Bemidji. Okay. Yes. Okay. Everyone's nodding. So must be something going on weird today. Sorry, you guys didn't get to introduce yourselves, but I did it for you. Go team. Yes. Feel free to put something in the chat. So thank you again all so much for spending your Sunday night with us. I'm really excited about this particular webinar because so far we've covered some stuff that kind of leads up to the competition, but tonight we're actually talking about the competition itself. So the first webinar we did, we talked about building your resume and finding and growing your social impact initiative or platform. And we do have recordings of that in the next one, which is the branding and marketing yourself, whether that be on social media or just the way you talk about yourself too. And so both of those are really great for things not just necessarily in the competition world, but really just in your life in general. But today is going to, of course, be helpful with life in general, but pertain more to the competition specifically. And it's the last one of this particular series. So again, the last two are recorded. This one is being recorded currently, and you'll be able to reference back to them as we move forward and as you prepare for your next competition, whether that's at the local or state or national level. So to break it down, I wanted to talk about what the phases of competition are specifically, because we haven't done that in one of the webinars quite yet. And just take a moment to talk about the importance of the interview specifically. So the phases of competition for the Miss candidates, that's again 19 to 26. The first thing that you compete in at the local level and at the state level, and even for me at the national level, is the 10-minute private interview with the panel of judges. And that 10-minute interview is actually 9 minutes and 30 seconds of question and answer going back and forth, and then 30 seconds of you getting to close your interview. So the closing of the interview, we can talk about that in a little bit, but essentially it's your opportunity to say whatever else is on your heart. Maybe you answered a question earlier and you didn't love your answer and you wanted to finish it, or maybe you were in the middle of answering a question when the time was running up and you wanted to finish, so you can use that 30 seconds for it. Or maybe you just want to put it all out there for the judges to hear if there's something, like I said, on your heart that you want to share. So you have that 9.5 minutes of back and forth questions, and then that 30 seconds. And that's worth 35% of your score. And besides, your resume and social impact initiative paperwork that we already talked about, this is their first in-person impression of you. And so keeping that in mind, it is incredibly important and has equal amount of weight as the heaviest weighted portion of competition. Sorry, I'm trying to get my settings so I don't keep seeing text messages pop up while I'm doing this. Thanks. All right, and then the next portion is the onstage interview, and that's a continuation of that private interview. The first judge who asks you a question in your private interview is then going to, after your interview is done, write down the next question they would have asked you. That piece of paper where they write down that next question they would have asked you gets put into an envelope, and then that question gets asked to you on stage. So for example, in my private interview at Miss Minnesota, we talked a lot about my personal battle with mental illness, and then also what I do with my social impact initiative, which talks about mental health and emotional well-being. So then my onstage question was about how I would handle the job of Miss Minnesota, even with my mental illness diagnosis, and it made sense because it kind of transitioned that way. And I could see that being my next question in my interview if we would have had another minute or so beyond that 10-minute interview. So that's 15% with that social impact pitch, which we talked about way back when in the first webinar. 35% talent, so equal amount as interview, just honoring the tradition of Miss America, always having that talent portion of competition as we moved through the century. And then last but not least, that red carpet and evening gown. But like I said, probably the most important, not just because it's one of the highest weighted, but also because it's the first impression, is that 10-minute private interview. And the same goes with our Miss candidates. So I should say contestants, team contestants, my bad. The team contestants, though it's not as weighted as talent, it's 25%, it's still the first impression of you in person that the judges are going to get, whether that's at the local or state or national level for the most part. So 25%, and you actually have as a team an 8-minute private interview. And that interview is the same thing. It's back and forth, but you don't have that 30-second closer. So there's a little bit of pressure relieved from you there. When your 8 minutes is up, you're done and ready to go. So you don't have that extra element that the Miss have. The team contestants also have lifestyle and wellness, and this was formerly known as lifestyle and fitness, where you had to do a whole fitness routine. Lifestyle and wellness is more so focused on how you take care of yourself and not necessarily your outward appearance in terms of your fitness level. 35% talent, and then 15% onstage question and evening gown. Typically your onstage question, Bella, I'll actually have you pipe in here. I'm pretty sure your onstage question at nationals had to do with your platform, if I remember correctly.
What was it? Something with, if I was talking, it was like, if I was talking to a first grade classroom, how would I explain my social impact to them? So they will mostly apply to what your social impact is. Very rarely will you get asked like a political question or even a personal question. It's more if you were asked a question about your social impact, how would you say it to the judges and the audience? Because you know the most about your social impact.
Awesome. Yes. And so just the difference there is the miss, you can be asked anything, but it would be technically the next question in your interview. And your onstage question for teen is going to typically, at most levels, relate to what your platform or social impact initiative is. I'm going to pause my screen here and look and make sure.
So
Interview. Thank you, Jody, for that
Yeah,
correction.
yeah,
That interview
yes.
is 35% at the local
Yes.
level for teens.
right. So at state, it is a little different. The percentages are different only because at the state level, they also do academic. An academic portion. And so that's where it gets a little messed up, but that's only at state, not at the local.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if we're actually doing academic anymore because they cut that for nationals. So that might be an iffy question.
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
So
okay.
far we are. Mhm.
woohoo, go team. All right, so 35% typically, well, at that local level. And so then then if you're going to be competing at state, that it is a little different. But now you know. And I learned something too. I didn't compete in teens, so I'm learning all this type of stuff as we go along. So again, just the importance of interview, one being the first thing that the judges see from you in terms of those in-person communications, and also for the fact that it is weighted quite a bit. Now, I'm going to go into some of my interview tips, and then we're going to open it up and have more of a conversation here. But these are the three main things that I would want someone to know about preparing for interview, whether that be at the miss or the teen level, and whether that be at the state or local or even national level. I will say that when I first started competing, the interview was the one thing that I seemed to catch on, pretty quick with. And it was because I practiced some of these things and I became kind of like a sponge and learned from everyone around me. I'm seeing there's a typo on the screen right now and it's bothering me. So I apologize for that. And I hope you're not as distracted as I am. So interview tips. First and foremost, you have to study for it. I know that sounds kind of like, oh, I don't want to study anymore, or why would I have to study for an interview? But I quite literally, and I meant to bring it out today, but I do. I was smart. Had this 3-ring binder when I was preparing for Miss Minnesota. And in it, you can see I have all these different tabs, but one of them was news. And I took notes on the news, and I also had one for vocab. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. But essentially, the thing with interview, especially at the miss level, the teen, not as much, but it's still really good to prepare this way and be over prepared, is that they can ask you quite literally anything and everything. From one moment I'm being asked, and this happened in my Miss Minnesota interview, I'm being asked silly questions, light, fluffy questions, like what do you do on a weekend or how do you relax? And then I'm being asked really serious matters like Black Lives Matter or, the George Floyd Memorial and everything along those lines. And so you have to be prepared to talk about just about anything. And the best way for me to do that was to know a little bit about a lot rather than a lot about a little bit, if that makes sense. So some of the things that I did in order to prepare is when I was watching the news, I would take notes, but I didn't just write down everything I heard. What I would do is if a news reporter was talking and something they said caught my attention, I would write that down, whether that's a statistic or just the way they phrased something. If they had someone who came on with an opinion that was different than mine, and I found that other person's argument to be really strong, I take notes on what the counter argument would be and things like that. So I quite literally take notes when I was watching the news. And I just spent some time doing that right away in the morning. It worked with my schedule. Now I recognize that that might not work with everyone's schedule to sit down and take notes or something like that. But another option is listening to podcasts. There's plenty of news podcasts. Maybe it's reading an email real quick in the morning. There's one from New York Times. There's one called The Skim, and you can take notes in your phone or even voice memos. There's lots of different ways that you can study the news in order to prepare for interview. The other thing I want you to think about are the other phases of competition. You kind of have to study and develop those same talking points about your talent, about your social impact initiative, about what you would do with the job, right? I know that when I go into an interview, I have some key phrases that if someone brings up one word like mental health, here's a phrase I'll say back to it. Or if someone brings up the word about lifestyle and fitness for Miss America, here's a phrase that I'm going to talk about. It helps that, you know, I may not know all the questions they're going to ask me, but if I know a quick response that I have either memorized or just really thought through and talked through a lot, then I'll just feel more prepared going into my interview and knowing any question that can come at me. Now, the second one, before I start, I see the chat's going off, so I'll make sure to do that too. But the second one is, remember that the judges are just as nervous as you. And I kind of put, you know, you may not know who your judges are, like you're just talking to a bunch of strangers, but one, they're also human. And two, I have yet to meet a judge who isn't just as a little nervous or as excited or kind of freaking out about it all. Whenever I've been able to meet judges or talk to judges, they're always like, I don't know how I'm going to pick, blah, 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 blah. And they're never sitting there thinking, oh, I can't wait to make this person mess up, or, oh, I can't wait to stump this person. No, they are just as excited and just as nervous and making sure that they pick the best person for the role of Miss Teen or the Miss, whatever the local or state title may be. That has always helped me when I'm walking into the interview room, remembering that these people, I mean, I've sat in mock interviews and just judged other people, and I'm always nervous, like, what am I about to say? Does it sound good? And it's just a mock interview. It's not even something that's like timed or scored, right? So recognizing that they are human, they're just as nervous as you, and they're also just as excited as you to hear about you. You know, they're not trying to sit there and stump you with things. They want you to do your best. People like seeing other people succeed. It makes them feel good. Okay. And last but not least, and this is the most important point that I can ever send home with anyone when it comes to interview, is to answer as you would, not how you think the current title holder or someone else would. And the perfect example I can think of is my first local competition. I competed at this specific local 2 times. And the first time I competed, I was trying to be everything that I thought they wanted me to be. And it got me to first runner up. But there was something that wasn't totally real or authentic about myself. Then the next year, I went into it with a different mindset. I thought I can either be what I think they want me to be, and then if I win, I have to pretend to be that person for a whole year. Or if I lose, I can sit here and wonder, what if I would have just been myself? So my talent was from the movie musical La La Land. And in my interview, one of the judges said, Ellie, what do you think of the end of the movie La La Land? And if you haven't seen it, just know that it's sad. And my first year, I would have answered that question along the lines of, well, it was really sad, but you know, there's always a lesson to be learned, even in that sadness or that heartache and la da 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 da. But the second year, when I actually won the title, I straight up looked at her and said, I cried for like 4 hours. And the judges all laughed and we talked, you know, I started having a conversation about, you know, La La Land and movies and how I don't like when they make me sad. And then we moved on. And I talked to some of the judges afterwards and they said, you were just so comfortable in your own skin. And it made us all feel comfortable talking to you. It made us want to talk to you longer. And that's when I realized if there's a secret to interview, that's it. It's being comfortable and confident in who you are, because it helps everyone around you feel more comfortable and confident in themselves and talking to you. So I'm gonna again pause my screen share and pull up some chat. All right. So when yes, news like current events, yes, they can be local, national, or state news that can be covered in this type of stuff. Do you take a personal stance on current events, or do you try to stay neutral? So
I
that
have
is
a really good
super
thought on
great
that
question.
one, Ellie. Once
Yes,
you're done.
yes.
Do you want me
go
to
for it.
answer that one, or do you have
Yeah.
a really good one?
Yeah, you go first and then I can add to it if needed.
Okay, so before I start, 80% of the stuff I say is by one of our sponsors. Her name is Stephanie Butler. And so she helped me with my interview. And so like 80% of what I'm going to say comes from her. So it's not my own thoughts. She told me, so it's a very personal decision if you want to decide, like if you feel very passionate about something and you're like, I can't get over it. If I say like, oh, it's okay, instead of being like, no, like that's wrong, you can totally do that. No judge is going to judge you on what you say about an opinion, but more about how you say it. So are you confident? Are you nervous? Are you whatever? But one of the biggest tips that I learned is if someone were to ask you a direct question like, how would you deal with blank? Instead of being like, I would deal with blank by blah, 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 you can point it to a bigger picture. So the best example that I ever got was when competing for Miss America's Outstanding, do you think she should be involved in politics? And it was something that I wasn't like yes or no on both sides. Like I saw them from both angles. And the way I had like worded the question was, well, I believe that the person who becomes Miss America's Outstanding Teen, she only has a year of service, so her time is very precious. If she believes that she should spend that time fighting for that politics, she totally can. I, however, would spend it in other ways, whether that's like volunteering or doing more with my social impact, because my time is valuable. So right there, you answer the question, but you don't really give an exact yes or no. So it's totally a personal opinion on whether you want to say yes or no to an answer.
And I think I've heard Bella talk about that before. And so I agree with that. And there are some times where it's easier to be like, yep, I agree with that, and then move on. There are other times where it might take a little bit more of an explanation. Another thing too, that, I mean, people will say the judges can't judge you on your opinion. They can only judge you on how you present it, as Bella said. With that being said, you do have to be very cautious in how you present things, especially if it's something that's causes great divide, or people are really passionate about those hot topics, whether that be about pro-life versus pro-choice or Black Lives Matter movement. If that does get brought up in your interview, you kind of have to read the room and see, am I talking to a group of individuals who are going to be empathetic to my opinion? And if not, I need to make sure that I present it in a way that shows, I can talk about it from both sides and I can respectfully express my opinion, even if someone disagrees with me or vice versa. So, yeah, that's a really good question. And it is something that will come up in an interview. Maybe if it isn't as a teen, then it will be as a miss. And if it isn't in one of those, I mean, I was one time, Bella can attest to this. We were at an appearance together in White Bear Lake, and two men came up to me and they just grilled me up and down about political questions. And in that moment, it was entirely inappropriate. But it can happen, just because you have a shining crown on your head, they think, well, let's see what she can do, or let's see what she can say. So it's good to be prepared for them, no matter what. But yeah.
And
Poor
usually,
Bella.
Sorry, let me just totally cut you off, Ellie. But usually as a teen, you will not get asked, like, what are your thoughts on abortion? Or like these very political divided things. They might ask you questions that like hint at it or like a side effect of it, but they're never going to straight up ask you that. And even if you do, then you just go back to being able to read the room and how do you like respectfully give your answer. But so teens, you don't have to be super, super worried about that one.
And I can say at a local level, for sure, you will not be asked. Teens will not be asked anything political at a local level. At the state level, they may. And actually, when I did, there was a lot of political questions directed at the teens. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, what the heck's going on here? And the state was good with it. and it was interesting that the teens were prepared for it. The other thing is when they were talking about when someone's asking you a question, and we judges are told that you don't have to, when we prepare the judges, we let them know that they don't have to agree with you, but do you like their stance, or do you feel that they are that they have a firm belief in what they say, and can you see that carried forward? And I can tell you, when I ask questions, I want to hear what people have to say. And a lot of the time it was stuff that I didn't agree. And it was great because the person who was talking was really passionate and about their stance and why. And one of the other things is if you're talking about something, like I know we do a lot of people are talking about Black Lives Matter and that type of thing. And for me, I would say, I'm going to ask them, what did you do? How did it affect you? And I think that's one thing. So if you're talking about something, talk about it from a stance that how it impacted your life. And if it didn't, maybe you'd say, you know what? I live in a place where it's, 90% Caucasian, and we're not really ethnically, there's not a lot of ethnic diversity and blah, 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 whatever, and that's okay. You may not have a stance on that because it's not what and that's all right. And I think that that's something where it says, this is who I am, and this is what I know about, right? So wanted to add that piece there.
Yes, thank you, Jody. And before I move on to the next slide, building off of something Jody just said, that's another way to answer a political question, is to bring it back to your personal experience. I know when people are really passionate about a certain issue, they'll tend to find holes in other people's arguments. And I'm not saying judges will necessarily be doing this, but this is just a good life tip. And they may be kind of on the prowl or on edge or something like that when you give your answer. But if you bring it back to your personal experience, and for instance, I guess we keep going back to this one, but it was asked in my Miss Minnesota interview, so now it's just on my mind, I should say. But when it came to how to represent people of color while being someone who was Caucasian, and I talked about, and they mentioned George Floyd and everything that had happened in Minnesota. And I talked about how I lived blocks from where George Floyd lost his life. And I watched our community fall apart, but then come back together. And these were the personal lessons I learned from that experience. And I made it about, again, my personal experience. And no one can argue with what you went through. It's your experience. So if you're starting to feel like, I don't really know what to say, but here's what I went through, that's a really great way to go about it too. So that's just, I'm going on a tangent now, so I'm going to keep moving forward before we just end up here forever. So what to wear? This is another fun part of preparing for any competition. Of course, you pick out your evening gown. Of course, you pick out your talent costume or outfit, right? But what do you wear for interview? And I think the most important thing that I have now learned in preparing for Miss America and learning from Miss America is that they want us to be able to take what we are wearing for an interview in the real world, like for a professional job, and wear that for your Miss Minnesota or Miss Minnesota's Outstanding Teen or Miss whatever outstanding teen, whatever it may be, and bring it into those interviews. A lot of times in the past, when we looked at the interview outfits for people who were competing for Miss America or Miss America's Outstanding Teen, they were custom made, or they had a cool design on the neck, or, they were this color that, I know when I competed, because I did compete at Miss Wisconsin once, the dress I wore for Miss Wisconsin interview, I never got to wear again. And I couldn't wear it for an interview because it was not appropriate. It was like off the shoulder and all that stuff. And Miss America is like, no, we want you to wear the interview clothes that you would wear to a job interview. outside of pageantry, right? And so I am going to pull up my inspiration board on my Pinterest page of all pages. And we can kind of talk about colors and things along those lines. Okay, so I have a Pinterest board for different interview looks. And you can see that these are trendy, and some of them you couldn't wear in a real life interview, but you can see that they're a little bit more traditional, right? I tend to like things that have either an interesting neckline or something that's just a little bit more up here, so the attention is brought up to my face. I don't like when things are super distracting for myself because, again, I don't want them looking at my outfit. I want them looking at my face. So whether that be different types of suits or jumpsuits or skirts or dresses, a good rule of thumb is basically keep it, how do I phrase this? Keep it clean and keep it appropriate. If it's something that feels even a little bit too short, or it's a little bit too low of a neckline, if you wouldn't wear it to church or you wouldn't wear it for a real life interview, probably not appropriate in this situation too. Note that a lot of the stuff I'm showing is very mature, and realize that if you are a teen, you can definitely wear something that's a little on the younger side. Of course, I'm competing for Miss, so that's different. But just some different ideas, and Pinterest is such a good place to start. Bella, do you have any tips for teen interview, or kind of how you found what you wore for your stuff?
So one of the best things, I guess, for teens is judges like bright colors, but as long as they're not like Justice, like the store bright colors. So none of those like neon greens. Pinks are fine, but I will say the dress I wore to MAO teen for my interview, I wore at my state interview. When I was at my state interview, it was I would say my dress is a pretty Miss dress. I don't know, just kind of simple. If you look at my Instagram page, it's on that. There's nothing really exciting about it, but I didn't really want anything exciting. I didn't want something distracting, but I definitely felt overdressed when I went to MAO teen, which is weird because I felt totally normal when I was at my when I won my state title. So it's a total preference thing. If you are like 13 or 14 or 15 and you want to look older, I would definitely choose a more mature dress, only so that you can look that older age. But for me, who's someone who's 16 or 17, I don't want to look like a Miss contestant because they'll tell me you look like a Miss. Like that's not a right interview dress. So if I would have gone back, I would have chose something maybe a little bit more bright colored, or had a little bit more interesting aspect to it. Because I looked at some of the other national teens and their dresses were very teen dresses. Like they looked like a teen, where I felt like a Miss. So it's a total preference thing. Try and find bright colors, nothing low cut, nothing too short. Honestly, if you wouldn't wear it to church or like a normal interview, you shouldn't wear it then. That was a pretty good line to use.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely went through my fair share of wrongs before I found a right interview look. Another good piece of advice that I got and I followed, fortunately, I have a sister in this position, but watch TV news anchors and see what they're wearing. Oftentimes, what they're wearing is meant to bring the attention to the face, and it's a little trendy, but it's still professional. And pay attention there. I literally borrowed, so my sister is on Channel 9. She does the traffic reporting and she's on the Jason Show. And I literally borrowed one of her work dresses for my Miss Minnesota interview. And there's just so many different options in terms of colors and cuts and things like that. But the most important thing is, one, make sure it's appropriate. Two, make sure you feel confident in it. And I mean, that's the biggest thing, because like I said, at the end of the day, when you walk into an interview and you're confident and you're comfortable, whether that be in what you're wearing or what you're saying, that's what's going to make or break how things go. It's going to make the judges feel more comfortable, or it's going to distract them. It's going to make them want to continue the conversation or feel uncomfortable, right? So making sure you feel comfortable and it represents you while still being appropriate. Jody.
Yep. So yeah, that's great. Skirt and blazer, skirt and top, I think for teens, yes, simple dresses like you said. I think bright colors and or again, what you're comfortable in. We did have someone who had in some of the, I've seen some neon colors and it's like, okay. But you can have a neon dress with some great shoes, that's, that's another piece of it. So the other things that, yes, modesty, so, one thing that you didn't talk about is don't wear the 6-inch platform heels, get yourself a good pair of pumps. That's what you want. Forget about the long, dangly, sparkly earrings. That's only for on stage, not an interview. I wrote, I think classy chic, comfortable, classy. That's, I think that's, yeah, there were some really great photos in there that you had. Yeah. And what, so it is what, what you feel comfortable in. And what was the other thing? Yeah. No need to show cleavage.
I did that once. Don't do it. I didn't even know I was doing it until I watched the video and I was like, so don't do it.
Let's see. And then the other thing I had on here, and this isn't about, but are you going to get to hair and makeup too?
No, we can talk about that now though. This is a good time.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just going to say, one of the things, there's a difference between stage makeup and interview makeup, right? And so you don't need to be all glammed up. It needs to fit your outfit, and it needs to flow. So, it's definitely not stage makeup. And I think that with the hair, keep it out of your face. I think, Ellie, you talked a lot about, this is about your face. This is where you want to, look. And so people do need to see your face too. So, and knowing that you wear your interview outfit on stage, that's when you could change to maybe have some more sparkly earrings if you want. But I also think that if it's, if you can keep your hair somewhat similar, that would be great too. I mean, and maybe it's not always possible. But if you had it up and, if you had it up an interview and then you're going to have it up right away or whatever, depending upon your talent, there's something to be said about that. So, so that you look like, so I think the other thing is that when you're in personal interview and then you're going to go on stage and do your impact pitch or, that type of thing for Miss, it should look like you're the same person that was in the interview and then on stage. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have one more thing to add quick for teens. Yeah. Just stay away from 2-piece interview outfits. You and I might find it really cute that it's like a shirt and a skirt and there's like a little bit of stomach showing, and some judges might find it cute, but anyone over the age of like 23 is not gonna like it. So just stay away from 2-piece outfits.
Yes, unless there's no skin showing in between.
Right.
Like you can do like
fine, but any
a top
skin
and skirt,
out.
right? But no midriff. Yeah, I think I had one in that thing, but in my board, but it wasn't. I couldn't pick it. I just liked the neckline. So
yeah, no, I was looking at. I had a board too for MAOT, and I was looking at it, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that was a 2-piece, not it.
Nope, we don't need that. Yeah, so about the hair for me, I did wear my hair down for one interview, and I found it incredibly distracting just while I was speaking because I had one piece of hair kept flying in my face. So ever since that happened, I have worn it up in a pony. And another thing I did, I can put this in the chat here. I'm going to do that. Is I went on this website, and you can get a free trial, I think. It's pageantslive, I think, .com. And on pageantslive.com, you can watch past state competitions from Miss America, but you can even watch some past interviews of people who have won their state or whatever. Minnesota isn't on there, sorry. But from there, I even just got an idea of like, okay, I liked that girl's neckline. Oh, I found it distracting that she was wearing big, long earrings, even though they were simple. Just get an idea of some of the different questions they asked. But I mean, really, I was watching it mostly to kind of see what I liked when I was watching someone talk at a podium. That's another part of interview is at the local level and at the state level, you will be at a podium. So think about that. You will be standing. Are you comfortable standing in heels? If not, wear flats. If you can find some good, cute flats that you feel confident in, go for it. I know that for me, this is talent, but at Miss Minnesota this year, I had plans to wear these tall heels for talent. And I got on stage and I could not walk and sing in those shoes like I could when I was at home practicing in them. I don't know if it was the nerves, I don't know if it was the stage or what it was, but I just couldn't. And I went down to much lower heels and my talent was that much better for it. So the same thing can be said with interview. If you have plans to wear tall heels, one, make sure they're appropriately tall. They're not like the 6-inch heels like Jody said. But two, you know, if you're not feeling comfortable standing in them for 8 minutes or 10 minutes, find some comfy flats or lower heels or whatever it may be that you are most comfortable in. You will not be judged on if you wear heels or not, or if you wear pants or a skirt. It's going to be how you present yourself and your confidence in whatever it is that you choose to wear. So anything more about appearance? I don't know, Madison, if you have anything to add, or Jody or Bella. Great. All right. So at this point, I had covered my main tips and stuff, but I wanted to make sure that we got to Bella, Jody, and Madison about anything else that you guys thought was relevant that hasn't been discussed yet in preparing for interview.
I can start. Honestly, you covered most of it. I had this like book that I used all throughout nationals, and I don't know where it is. So I would have had better stuff, but not tonight. So when I left after I had won state, I went and talked to the judges because you go and talk to them right after. The thing they told me is that the second I walked into that interview room, they knew that I wanted this job. The second I walked out of the interview, it was really, really hard for them to see anybody else as Miss Minnesota's Outstanding Teen. So when they went into the night of competition, all they could think about was like my interview stood out against everyone else's. And so they said that they knew I had won back in the interview before anyone even competed on stage. So personally, I think that the interview is the biggest portion of this competition, only because if I would have not done great in my interview, it would have just been like every other girl. And then I would have had to base all my efforts on like my talent, my lifestyle and wellness, all that things. But it was the interview that like totally set me apart. So if you can do mock interviews with people, if you ask anyone, they will do a mock interview with you. No one usually turns down a mock interview. And they're really awkward sometimes. I will personally say I hate mock interviews, but they're so good for me. Because it's when you get that feedback of someone who knows you or maybe doesn't know you and they give you that feedback, you need to take that feedback because they're probably right and it will help you in the long run. So mock interviews really, really helped me. And then just honestly sitting down and writing down every single question I could ever think of and giving like a quick answer to each of them right off the bat, that really helped me too at nationals. But no, otherwise you mostly covered it.
I'm going to read what Madison said real quick here, just for the people who are going to be watching the recording. But Madison said, just be yourself and be confident in your answers. Also, for the miss, take advantage of the last 30 seconds to talk about what's on your heart. I've had it in the judges' comments multiple times to use that time more wisely. My biggest pet peeve in the 30-second closer is when you start your closer by saying, thank you all so much for your time, or start your closer with saying, I can't believe I only have 30 seconds. No, that's a waste of time. Because one, you can say thank you at the end as you're walking out the door. And I mean, it's important to say thank you, but you have 30 seconds. And this is your chance to, if you feel like you had an awful interview, nail it with that 30 seconds and say, this may have been my least confident I felt in an interview. So I need you all to know why I still, after everything that just transpired, deserve this job of Miss Blank. And put your heart on the line. I mean, I'm not saying you have to cry. Please don't take this as you have to cry. But I usually get so emotional in my closers that it's taking everything in me not to cry, because I'm usually with Miss Minnesota and my local title, I wanted those titles. And so I put everything into it and I was like, keep it together. Okay. Don't take that as you have to cry or say something super emotional. But again, using that time wisely to lay it all out there and sell to the judges why it is that you're there. Okay. Jody.
Yes. Okay. So let me read the other stuff. So the other things that I wrote is prepare for your interview to talk about your local community, why you're competing for the local competition, talking about your family, your social impact initiative, and anything from your resume. Do not always bring, when they're asking questions, do not always bring it back around to your social impact initiative. And I remember that Bella said this before too, when we were talking, you're more than your social impact initiative, right? There are so many more different aspects to you. So you have the written stuff. Don't repeat what you already wrote. If you've said, I've gone to all these schools and done all of this stuff, don't say it again. Say something different, add something different to it. Be able to expand. And again, don't always bring it back. And if you feel like, I know a lot of times people use that last moment to talk more about their social impact initiative. But if you really feel like you've covered everything that you've needed to, you don't need to do that. And I like what Ellie said is if you really want the job and you've competed, 3 times and you're like, this is really what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. Tell them, so there was a couple things. Enjoy yourself, have fun, be real. I know it's stressful, relax as much as possible. It's fun to laugh, right? Sometimes people, they repeat the question and then they go on to their answer. I think a lot of people have been trained to do that, repeat the question back. Find short ways to do that. If you do that with every question, I go, okay, right? You don't need to do that. And maybe, make sure you listen to the whole thing. There's some people that go, yes, that's a great question. Sure, I'll answer that for you. And sure, yes, sure, yes, great. Okay, thank you. Yes, right? And they keep doing that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I know a lot of people have been trained to do certain ways to answer interview questions. There's a ton of training out here of this is the way you do it. That can be great, but be yourself. Because if you read, like I noticed that you put up a training book, that's great. But if it doesn't fit for you, don't do it. Because I can tell you in an interview, I'm going to be able to tell that you're responding the way you were told to respond based on who your trainer was. And you can tell when people from walking, like, oh, so-and-so trained this person on how to walk. So-and-so trained that person on how to do this. It is complete. I mean, people know. And at a state level, people know who did what and who trained who based on what they do. And so if nothing else, when you're just being you, that's all you got, right? And you're having fun and you're asking questions and, oh, are you asking me, this or whatever, I mean, that's okay. Always be yourself no matter what. Because the other thing that I always tell everybody is it's a really hard year to be someone that you're not. And that's what Ellie said before. And it's so hard to be somebody you're not. All the great training and all the great tips, if it is not you, don't do it. It's a tough year. They will ask you some questions to try to throw you off. Some people will. I had somebody ask some really tough questions. And later I was like, after we were done, and I said, I just want to know, do you know all the answers to those questions that you asked? I mean, they were some big national stuff. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, you're really smart. Right. And for me, I don't study that. So I don't know that. I know more about mental health and personality and those types of things. Right. I don't know about national news. I don't pay attention. I go like that. But anyway, that's not really here. Pay attention to your hands, what you're doing with your hands. We didn't talk about that, but do pay attention to that. The other thing, standing at the podium, how do you want to stand? How do you want your feet to be? Now, again, this is like, I'm getting really picky only because I pay attention. If we're interviewing a dancer, I know exactly how she's going to stand, right? It's however they do that, whatever, when they're dancing that position. Bella, you're laughing. What is it? What
They're
is
called like ballet positions is what they do.
Yeah.
But it's like there's first
like-
position, but then some people go in fifth position. And then if you're weird, you stand in third position.
Yeah. I can tell. Anyway. And only because I pay attention to things like this, and I mentioned before, I think when we were talking that, with how you're marketing and all these other things that we were talking about like Facebook pages and things like that. And you may get a question about something really personal. So be aware about what's out there about you. Don't lock your knees. I think people have heard about that one. And then the other one is I just wrote down, is it you speaking or is it somebody else? I know for me, it's always just me speaking. I've done all the training. You know what? It's still just me. I probably because I don't listen very well. I don't take direction very well. Smile and have fun. That's the biggest thing. Smile and have fun. I mean, really, that's really, and Stephanie does do a nice job. She does.
Yeah. I was just going to throw in there because we were talking about how your feet are, how your hands are, blah, 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 blah. One of our great sponsors for Miss Minnesota and Miss Minnesota's Outstanding Teen is Stephanie Butler. She does speech consulting is what she does like for a living in this big bank. I don't even remember. Is it Ameriprise? I think. I don't know. But then she also has been doing this in terms of candidates and contestants within different systems. And she can be really helpful if you are looking for that help. But with that being said, before winning Miss Minnesota, I never once saw a coach or a trainer or anything like that, whether that was for my walking or my talking. I sought out my own education by watching different videos, like I said. I also looked to former title holders or my local committee members who were able to help me. So also recognize that if you do have the capacity and you do want to see Stephanie Butler or someone else in the world that you find, go for it. Awesome. But you don't need it to win. I mean, like I said, it wasn't until I became Miss Minnesota that I started getting in touch with these people for the national competition because they're our sponsors. But before that, I did it with the help of local volunteers and friends and family, and just putting my mind to it and doing the research on my own. So
And Dale Carnegie is another sponsor of ours, and they do very similar things to Stephanie. It's about, how to present your ideas and how to give a speech. And so, yeah, very, very similar, very similar.
Yes, Dale Carnegie is another one too. Couple more resources that I wanted to put in the chat are podcasts that I listened to in preparing for the state competition and local and now even national. And some of these, the first two I put on there, Powerhouse Podcast and The Grit Behind the Glitz, have mock interview episodes where they ask a question and then they wait like 30 seconds and you can practice answering with these podcasts. And so I did that in the car. It gives you some really good practice, and you can find it in those. Other ones that I used to get varying opinions on current events included The Daily, Pantsuit Politics, and Skim This. And I know there's a billion more out there, but those are just some of the ones that I really enjoyed listening to, and I felt like gave me a good perspective in terms of both sides of the argument. It didn't feel like I was hearing just like one way or the other, which is really important in preparing. So I wanted to make those resources available to you as well. And there was one other thing, Kayla, you said you got Kayla said she got a really good piece of advice one time, and I wanted to let her share that if needed.
Can I give my thing quick? Yeah, I have something to say quick. Sorry. I put in the chat the thing. It's a book that said, "Did I really say that?" It's a very basic teen pageant book, I would say. It just has like simple things about your interview. So if you're a teen and you're new to this, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Even if you just skim it and you see the interview tips on it, it really, really helped me.
Yeah. Okay, Kayla.
Yes, so at the Miss Winona pageant, I had the pleasure of being able to talk with Jennifer Otstegard after, who was a former Miss Winona and Miss Minnesota. And I asked her, what is one piece of advice you would give to a candidate? And she said, oh man, I wish that when I was competing, I could have been a judge before I competed again. Because I would have realized that the judges aren't there to say why you aren't this title or why you don't deserve this title. They're there to see why you should have this title and why you deserve it. So she said, come in and just be yourself and give them a reason to give you the title, because that's why they're there.
I love that. That's so good. Yes, Jennifer is a former Miss Minnesota too, so
yes,
she knows what she's talking about. Jody, did you have one more thing you wanted to add to?
No, I just said that's great.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. All righty. The last thing that I wanted to leave before we go into some more questions was the best piece of advice that I got in preparing for that second time I competed at that local. And this was the quote that was given to me by a now dear friend of mine. She was first runner-up to Miss Wisconsin last year, former Miss Wisconsin's Outstanding Teen, and a sister in crown from our local title. But she reminded me of this quote when I was preparing for an interview. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this whole time I've been talking about you feeling comfortable and confident, and that in a way you walk into the room, kind of like Bella says, she walked into the room and the judges felt her energy of confidence and they felt more comfortable being able to have a conversation with her. If you go in there and you're comfortable and confident and you just take ownership of the space and you have a conversation with the judges the way you would have a conversation with a friend, like that's how true to yourself you are, but of course a little more professional. That's what the judges are going to remember. They're going to remember wanting to talk to you more. They're going to remember feeling comfortable around you and wanting to, like I said, spend more time with you. So you can go in there and you can list the thousands of dollars you've raised or the incredible work you've done with your talent. But if you deliver it in a way that is a list or robotic or structured or scripted, and you're not just authentic, the judges are going to not remember all the things you said and listed. They're just going to remember being around you and feeling uncomfortable. So I want you to keep that in mind about the energy that you're giving off. And especially when you're thinking about how would I answer this question, this question, this question, you could say the totally wrong thing, but you could just be like, well, I said it, I'm here, let's keep moving forward. And that might have even a greater impact. Madison said in the chat that at one point in a state interview, she said, I don't know, to a question that she didn't know an answer to. And sometimes that's better than trying to make something up and coming off really rigid and terrified and anxious, right? Is just being able to say, I don't know, and that's okay. And then being able to move forward from there. So that's the quote I tell myself before going into interview. And I'd encourage you to do the same. Whoops. Go the other way, please. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, so now we just have some more time for questions. You can private message me or Bella or Jody or Madison, and we can list them off. Let's see. I have a question. Tips for on-stage interview or timed interview questions. So yes, with your on-stage interview questions, sometimes they will say you have 30 seconds or 20 seconds to answer. One, you're going to get a question, listen to the whole thing before you start formulating a response. For me, I like to talk right away. And I realized, I thought that was a great way for me to do it because I always succeeded with it. I started recently taking a breath before I started talking, and I realized just how helpful that was in answering. I also was once, and this is the tip that works for some people, not for all people. Sometimes I'm able to use it and other times I'm not. I was also told once the 3-sentence rule to make sure you stay within a time frame if you're really worried about that. So say you get a question like, what is better tasting, almond milk or regular milk? This is a really horrible answer, but you use the first sentence to answer the question. I would say, I prefer almond milk. Then you use the second one to recognize that there is another side, or maybe show that you're aware of other opinions. And I could say, I understand that it's important to support our local dairy farmers. But then the third sentence, or second half of that second sentence, is you bring it around to personal experience or how your answer relates to yourself. And say something like, but I personally choose to be vegan. That's not true about me, so I wouldn't actually say that. So I don't use any animal byproducts. That was the worst question, but you kind of totally, you get the idea. You answer the question, you recognize that there may be another side, or if there isn't another side, you can back that up, and then you back it up with a personal experience, or, wrap it all together. So practice answering with 3 sentences, because then you're more likely to stay within that time frame. Again, that doesn't work for everyone, and it doesn't work for every question. So you have to be able to kind of be flexible, but it's just a piece of advice I received and has helped me.
And then one more thing too, is when you're answering an onstage question, miss or teen, don't ramble on. At nationals, there were a lot, Ellie knows exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of girls that you answer the question and you keep talking and talking and talking and talking. It's like, you just need to answer the question. So if the question was, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is blue because it reminds me of the ocean. They would be like, my favorite color is blue because it reminds me of the ocean. And one time my grandma and I went to the ocean and we're building a sandcastle, except I forgot my sand bucket, and just went on and on and on. You're like, you don't need that. Like, as long as you answer the question, the judges don't care about anything else. And then if you ramble on so long, they're going to forget what you said. They're going to forget how you actually answered the question. So yes, do not ramble on.
No. And here's a good one. I will say everything Bella is saying is true. And I was never more proud to be her miss than when she answered her onstage question at Miss America's Outstanding Teen, because the girl didn't take 2 minutes. And I understand that there are some answers that are more complicated, and there were very few of them that elicited the response that they got. But even if you were told no time limit, still keep it short, keep it sweet. If you find yourself rambling, guilty. I've done it before. I did it in my state interview too. What I do is think, what was the question? And so say the question was really simple. It's a yes or no. And I say yes or no. And then I get kind of lost in a train of thought. Actually, perfect example was my onstage question. My onstage question was, should Miss Minnesota be required to make appearances in communities that have less than a 40% vaccination rate? And I lost my train of thought completely. I couldn't think of the word I wanted. I just started rambling and I was like, what am I saying as I'm on stage competing for Miss Minnesota? And then I said to myself, what was the question? And it was, should she be able to? Should she be able to say no, or should she go? And I just said, as Miss Minnesota, I would attend those appearances and educate those people on what I believe in. And then I walked off. And I remember I texted my mom, I said, Mom, I botched it. That was awful. And she said, but you wrapped it up nicely. So if you find yourself going on this tangent, or if you're lost, just think of the question. And if you forgot the question, honestly say, I just went off on a tangent there, but I hope that you understood my answer. Moving forward, bring it back to that question and recognize it happens and it's okay. Just bring it back, wrap it up. Okay. Any other questions or anything that you're like, any advice for blank? Wow, quiet crew tonight. All righty. Well, I will go ahead and stop sharing here. Again, thank you all so much for spending your night with us for the last webinar of the series. I hope that it was helpful for you, and know that we'll be sending out all of the different recordings. They're going to be on a private YouTube channel, so you can just listen to them like you would listen to a podcast if you missed some of the other ones too. But hopefully you got some good information, and we'll see you at the next competition.